Samsara dava nalalida loka Tranaya karanya ganaganatvam Praptasya kalyana gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravinda Praptasya kalyana gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravinda Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Padritya Madhya Manaswara Sena Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Padritya Madhya Manaswara Sena Romancha Kampa Shritaranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravinda Shri Vigrahara Dhananitya Nana Shingaratan Mandira Majanado Yuktasya Bhakta Shaniyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravinda Chaturvidashi Bhagavat Prasada Swadhana Triptan Haribhakta Sangan Kritaiva Triptim Bhajata Sadaiva Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravinda Shiradikam Ikama Davayora Para Madhurya Lila Guna Rupa Nam Nam Pratikshana Swadhana Lalupasya Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravinda Nikunjayuna Radikali Siddhai Yayali Viryuktir Apekshaniya Tatrati Daksha Rati Vallabhasya Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravinda Sakshadarit Vena Samasta Shashter Uktastata Bhavyata Eva Sadvi Kintu Prabhurya Priyeva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravinda Yasya Prasadat Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasadat Nagati Kutopi Nayam Stuvam Sasya Yasya Sri Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda. Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda. Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vasyacha Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nilamada Radha Nilamada Radhe. Jaya Radha Nilamada Radha Nilamada Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Lakshan Hanuman. Jaya Goranita, Jaya Goranita, Jaya Goranita, Jaya Goranita. Nitya Gora Haribol, 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 Nitya Gora Haribol.
ISKCON founder, Charter PPT founder, Charter Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramhamsa Bhajaka Charya Stota Shata Shishmad Divine Grace. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavanda ki jai. Nama Charya Srila Harita Thakur ki jai. Permise Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kund Giri Govardhana ki jai. Shri Vrindavana Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapur Dham ki jai. Shri Ayodhya Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Yamuna Mai ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Varutini Ekadasi Titi ki jai. Ekadasi Varta ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Gaura Premanande. All glory to assembled devotees. All glory to assembled devotees. All glory to assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glory to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Praladadayene. Hiranyakashipurvakshaha. Shilatankanakalaye. Hito Narasimha Parato Narasimha. Yeto yeto yami tato Narasimha. Bahir Narasimha, Hridaye Narasimha. Narasimha Madhu Sharanam Prabhate. Tava Kara Kamalavarenu Adbhuta Shringa Dalita Hiranyakashibu Anudinga Tarahari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare Jaya Jagadish Hare. Adbhuta केशवद्रीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवद्रीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंह देव नरसिंह देव नरसिंह देव जय नरसिंह देव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद नरसिंह देव भगवान की जय
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवसुचा विष्णु भक्तिपदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य विष्णुभक्तिप्रति देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवसुचा विष्णु भक्तिपदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य विष्णुभक्तिप्रति देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवसुचा विष्णु भक्तिपदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य विष्णुभक्तिप्रति देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः
वृंदाय तुलसी महारानी की
जय
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रियसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो यही अभिलाषी राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो यही अभिलाषी ये तुम्हार शरण लो तारा वंश पूर्ण हो कृपा कोरि कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी। मोरा ये अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास। नयने हेरिबो सदा युगल रूप रासी। यही निवेदन धारो सकिरानुगाता करो। सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी। दीन कृष्ण दास कोय ये न मोरा होय। श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदाय नवासी। श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदाय नवासी। यानि कानि च पापानि प्रमाहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माद्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माद्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम Ram Ram Hare Hare Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nitya Gaure Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaure Hari Bol. वृंदे देवी तुलसी देवी महारानी की जय। श्री वृंदायै तुलसी देव्यायै प्रियायै केशवश्च कृष्ण भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। श्री वृंदायै तुलसी देव्यायै प्रियायै केशवश्च विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। श्री वृंदायै तुलसी देव्यायै प्रियायै केशवश्च विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। श्री वृंदे देवी तुलसी देवी महारानी की जय।
Oh, Tulasi, Lord of Krishna, I
I bow before you again.
my desire is to serve the Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter from you has reached the field. Bestow mercy upon him in making my residence in Vrindavan. My desire is also grant me residence in the pleasure go to Shri Vrindavan. Thus within my vision I showed before the beautiful path of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Karho Danso's Vraja. Please give me the privileged devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays. May I always swim in the love of Shri Radha and Govinda. Tulasi Maharani ki. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting holy names that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme devotees who have dedicated their life for the propagation of holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the name of the demigods like Shiva or Brahma to be equal to independent name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or the literature in pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one's auspicious ritualistic activities offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities, karma, ganda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about the glory of the holy name. 10. To not complete faith in the chanting holy names and to maintain material attachments even understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to achieve desired success, Krishna prema. Now let us have our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just as high trees who can fulfill to everyone, and they have full compassion for the fallen, conditioned souls. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Cheto Tarpana Marjanam Bhavamahatavakni Nirvapanam Shriya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavatu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Patipadam Purnarmita Sadhanam Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakali Bahuta Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Smaranena Kalaha Eta Deshi Tavakripa Bhagavam Mamapi Durudevami Disham Yaha Janina Nurakaha Trinata Pi Sunichena Tarora Pi Saishnuna Amanina Manatena Kirtaniya Sada Harihi Na Thanam Na Janam Na Sundarim Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kamaye Mama Jammani Jammanishware Bhavata Bhaktir Haituki Tvai Ai Nanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Pavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Sthita Duri Satesham Vichintaya Nayanam Garadashuru Daraya Vadanam Katigata Rudaya Gira Pulaka Nichitam Vapu Kada Tava Nama Kahane Bhavishati Yuga Itam Nimishena Chakshusha Pravisha Itam Shunya Itam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahe Name Ashri Shava Padaratam Pinnastumam Adarshanam Marmhatam Karotuva Yatha Tatha Va Vitatha Tu Lampato Mat Prana Nathastu Sa Eva Naparaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Glory to Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated over years and extinguishes fire of conditional life or repeated births and deaths. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity in the large because it spreads a rays and benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases ocean transcendent bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone grant all benediction human beings. And thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendent names you have vested all your transcendent energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness enables us to easily approach you by holy names. But I'm so unfortunate to have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more taller than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Sanhamarjananda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the ardent at the lotus feet. O my Lord, will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? Will my voice choke up? Will the hair of my body stand and end a recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling of separation, I'm constant moment to be like a millennium. Tears are flowing from eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all weakened in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Shri Mangala Charanam prayers ki jai. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshum Litam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurung Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Sarasate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatyate Shatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Ti Namini Shri Varshapanavi Devi Daitaya Kripaptaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayine Prabhave Namaha Madhurjala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktita Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Viruta Pasithanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padam Pojayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachidananda Namane Gaura Shakti Svarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Bhava Bhumistvam Nirdeshta Sajana Priyaha Vaishnava Savabhaumashi Jaganathaya Te Namaha Vancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhu Pyevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakham Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karna Sindho Dinapanto Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Srato Pango Mama Manda Matergati Masarvasva Padam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divya Vindaranya Kaupajumadaha Shimadrana Gara Singhasanasto Shrimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prishtari Pi Sevamano Samarami Shriman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsi Vata Tatastita Karsham Venu Sanergo Pir Gopinata Shri Yestunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Tata Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakarasat Masuka Praviksha Laksha Vriteshu Surabir Apipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Shata Samprama Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kavanantam Aravinda Talaya Daksham Parharvatam Samasitam Pudasundarangam Kantarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shopam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandrakala Savanamari Vamshi Ranam Kadam Panayakedi Kalavilasam Shamam Tripanga Laditam Niyata Prakasham Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalentri Vrittimanti Pashanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Satujala Vigrahasya Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Akritam Achotam Manati Mananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedeshu Durapam Adurapam Adam Bhakto Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Shatavasara Sampragamyo Vayurathapi Manaso Munipungavanam Sopyasti Yat Prapada Simya Vichinta Tattve Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitum Jagadanta Kotim Yachakti Rasti Jagadanta Chayaya Danta Antantarastha Paramanu Chayantarastham Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Pavitati Yo Manujastateva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasana Yana Bhusha Suktaryam Eva Nikama Patitai Stuvanti Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananta Chimaya Rasa Patipavitabi Tabiya Eva Nijarupataya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasatya Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churuta Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundam Achintya Guna Swarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Mutishu Kalanyamena Tishtan Nanavatara Makaro Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavad Parama Pumam Yo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharini Nirvise Sasunyavadi Paskati Lisatarani. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi Haribo. So, you want to read your homework? So today is the second day of homework done by many devotees. So take your time, read very carefully. Let's see, what's his name here? Swarit, 1 second, let's see what his name is. All right, go ahead, you start.
Okay. The assignment was read the lecture, make an outline along with examples that Srila Prabhupada uses.
Speak louder. Repeat that again, speak louder.
Read the lecture, make an outline along with examples.
5.5.1, Srimad Bhagavatam. Go ahead.
Make an outline along with examples that Srila Prabhupada uses. I only was able to fully capture the first half. I have a category called What is Knowledge, or someone used the words process of knowledge. And for that, knowledge comes from Krishna, either from the person Bhagavatam or from the book Bhagavatam. Real knowledge is like the desire tree that can manifest anything desired. Real knowledge brings us closer to Krishna. An example of our Ashram Dharma civilization brings us closer to Krishna. One tree and one Vedas. A desire tree of knowledge and teaches all spiritual. I need to rephrase that. There's one tree, the Vedas, and that tree teaches material and spiritual knowledge needed to survive in this material world. All slokas are spiritually potent. We take lessons from the person's Bhagavatam. Don't use your brain to produce made-up nonsense. A poet gives his poetry to Swami. I'm not sure what I'm referring to there. My next category is material knowledge, wasting life with sense gratification. We currently are addicted to the 4 sinful activities, meaning society and individually. We are so mad after it that we are suffering, thinking that we are not actually suffering. We are blind to the cycle of karma, so we insist on gratifying our senses and breaking Krishna's laws. Then we get punished. Our blindness keeps us breaking the laws and continually to get punished. Our material consciousness also is convinced that we are this body. For the category of spiritual knowledge, I saw we need to learn to see correctly. Examples include Arjuna. He was originally thinking that it was wrong to kill his family members, but he asked questions, and Krishna immediately delivers spiritual knowledge needed to see the situation correctly. We are part and parcel of Krishna. Examples cited, a finger is attached. When a finger is attached, it is valuable, and we can spend thousands of dollars to keep it in working order. When the finger is detached, it is not valuable. Human life is rare. To waste it is acting like a dog or a hog. so for hog life, they work really hard for sense enjoyment, and they have no discrimination. Thus, they could have illicit activities with their sister or mother. For a dog, they might bark to establish a territory, and they take service of a master. And I meant to put in there that typically that's like a business master, not necessarily a spiritual master. And then I put a lot of other stuff in here. I don't know if you want me to read some of that.
Well, whatever you wrote.
I'm going to leave the rest of it out because I went paragraph by paragraph trying to find points, and it's rather long.
All right, it's up to you.
Was there someone else?
Thank you. Yeah, okay, 1 second. Who is Swarit? What? Swarit Prapti. Oh, is he here? Okay, he did homework. All right, so then let's do now. Trying to go in order here. A lot of people did homework. Okay, I guess Shasti? Shasta. Okay, thank you, Dhananjaya. Take your time, read out loud. I have a very interesting thing to announce today. You're all going to be shocked. I was shocked, but I won't tell you right now. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
So the homework was to make an outline of all the major points that Prabhupada makes and the examples that he gives in his lecture. So I divided it based on the themes that he spoke about in the lecture. So the first theme is the importance of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is Nigama Kalpataror Galitam Phalam, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.3. The Vedas are like a desired tree from which the desired fruits are born. From this tree you can receive all kinds of knowledge, both spiritual and material. But of these fruits of the tree, the Srimad Bhagavatam is said to be the best. The next theme is why and how to understand the Srimad Bhagavatam. If we truly take advantage of Srimad Bhagavatam, then we will understand Krishna as well as the devotees. The correct way to approach Srimad Bhagavatam is by hearing it in a consecutive manner under the tutelage of a bona fide Bhagavata, or one who sincerely follows the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the process of learning Srimad Bhagavatam, there are two entities. There's the Grantha Bhagavatam, which is the book Bhagavatam, and then there's the person Bhagavatam, who is the one who imparts knowledge of Srimad Bhagavatam unto the seeking disciples, or the one who leads by example. The next theme Prabhupada talks about is the purpose of Vedic civilization. The purpose of Vedic civilization is to realize God and our position as servants as part and parcel of the Lord. Bhagavata Dharma, or spiritual life, can be realized when we understand our spiritual identification. Spiritual knowledge begins with the first lesson from Krishna to Arjuna. I am not this body, I am the soul. The next theme is that the bodily concept is animal life. What will you find if you dissect this body? You'll find flesh, blood, bone, urine, stool, and so many other material things. Identifying with these materials is unintelligent. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 84th chapter, 13th verse, anyone who thinks of this body as their identity, such a person is no better than the cows and asses. The next theme is overcoming the inferior material energy. So Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter 5th verse says, these material elements, earth, water, air, fire, sky, mind, intelligence, and ego, these are 8 separated energies of the Supreme Lord. Here the Lord uses the word aparayam, or inferior, to describe the material energies. So in this conditioned form of life, we are spiritual energies covered in the material energy of the Lord. The purpose of the human form of life is that it is an opportunity to come out of the material energy and realize that we are the soul and not this body. So the next theme is acting on the spiritual concept of life. So the next question that one must ask after realizing their identity is, what is my duty? In this material world, we are constantly expanding on the material concept of life through our various bodily and temporary relationships. For example, you will find street dogs barking at each other from across their neighborhoods, saying, "This is my neighborhood, this is my neighborhood." So that designation that this neighborhood belongs to me is a material designation. The basis of the spiritual conception of life is that everything belongs to Krishna. Isa Vasyam Idam Sarvam. Ishopanishad Mantra 1. Apo Nalo Vayu. Bhagavad Gita 7 chapter 4th verse. Similarly, we are also not independent, as we are the energy of the Lord as well, and our value is only determined by our acceptance of our connection with the Lord. So Prabhupada gives the example of a finger cut off from the hand. So when a finger is cut off from the hand, it is useless. But when the finger is on the hand and serves the body and listens to the instructions of the body, then it is useful. So the next theme that Prabhupada talks about is the value of the human form of life. So here Prabhupada quotes Srimad Bhagavatam 5th canto 5th chapter 1st verse. Nayam deho deha bhajam niloke kashtan kaman arhate vidbhujam ye. This human body is not meant to be spoiled or wasted by engaging it uselessly in hard labor for the gratification of senses. We should not waste this opportunity due to the current mammonist society. The current fast-paced, cutthroat society is not the spiritual ideal. Real spiritual life is peaceful and free of troubles and hankerings. The original civilization was organized in a way that Brahmanas were the ones who advised the Kshatriyas on spiritual knowledge, and the Kshatriyas in return were the ones who would spread this Vedic knowledge to the other citizens. So the 4 Varnas and the 4 Ashramas are organized in a way to ensure harmony and spiritual growth for each person by removing conflicts between material and spiritual duties. So the next theme, Prabhupada talks about what one must do beyond civilization.
What is that again?
What one must do beyond civilization. So if one gives up civilization, what they must do.
All right, let me hear what you say.
So Prabhupada says that tapasya is the next step if one gives up civilization. And he gives the definition of tapasya as austerity or voluntary acceptance of discomfort.
Did he use the word gives up civilization? I don't think so.
Oh, yeah, giving up Vedic civilization.
Okay, that's better.
Okay. Yeah, I meant to say Vedic civilization,
Right.
like the Varnashrama system.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
giving up civilization,
Yeah.
it's giving up the Asura civilization, which is not civilized.
So tapasya is austerity or voluntary acceptance of discomfort for the sake of spiritual advancement. The real problem is the body. By reducing the comforts of the body, we can go beyond the obstacle of our attachment to the material life. Because people are only engaged in satisfying the body, people are driven mad. They engage in the forbidden activities of drinking, meat eating, gambling, and illicit sex. The madness is such that we mistake the material suffering for so-called enjoyment and continue to experience the threefold miseries, Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, and Adi Atmika. So the next concept that Prabhupada talks about is the 8.4 million species of life. So Prabhupada mentions how the human species of life is so rare that it is the culmination of a cycle involving over 8.4 million different species. 2 million of these species are trees, plants, insects, and very archaic forms of life. This all goes to show how we must take Srimad Bhagavatam's instruction very seriously, that in the human society you should not waste it like the hogs and dogs simply for sense gratification. So the next topic that Prabhupada talked about was how to understand real truth. So here Prabhupada gives the phrase Shastra Chakshu, or that our knowledge should be coming through the Shastra, or that we should see everything through the lens of the Shastra. So the process of knowledge which we follow in the Vedic civilization is the process of deduction, which is we get knowledge from the Shastra, for example, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and then from that we try to understand everything around us.
So now let's understand what the nonsense people do and what a genuine acharya like Prabhupada does. Prabhupada accepts that the Vedic literature, spoken originally by Krishna and repeated by persons like Brahma and other great acharyas, is perfect. It's all about self-evident truth. Self-evident truth is something you can't argue against. Just like if you say everybody has a mother and father, is there any idiot that's going to try and argue against that? There are idiots like that. They'll say, no, there's a test tube baby. Well, even a test tube baby has a mother and father. You can't. A test tube baby, the sperm of the father and the ovum of the mother are put together in a nutrient base, and then they connect, and the baby is born. So there's still mother and father. So it's a self-evident truth. You can't argue against it. So all the truths of the Vedas are self-evident truths. So if you start with a self-evident truth and then deduct from it, just like all men are mortal, that's a self-evident truth. John is a man. Therefore, John is mortal. Now, you didn't have to do any research. You just used deductive reasoning. That is, you start from a self-evident truth and you deduct. You make, let's say, logical assumptions based on the self-evident truth. So the self-evident truth is all people are mortal. John is a person. Therefore, John is mortal. So this is the way devotees think. They don't use any inductive process of let's do some experimentation. Let's see if there's some recurring points. Let's make a theory based on the predictability of our theory. So that is incomplete, that's imperfect. There will always be mistakes, and you'll never reach the real truth that way. That's called aroha, the ascending process of knowledge. But we depend on the descending knowledge, avaroha. We start from the self-evident truths of the Vedas, and we deduct. We make, we find out different things based on the infallibility of the self-evident truth. And at every point where we deduct something, we see if it corresponds to reality or not. If it corresponds to reality, we haven't made a mistake, and then we just keep going. You know. So that's how Prabhupada said in 1969, they did not go to the moon. Because they described the moon as a place which was very dusty and dark and cold. So Prabhupada said, that's not the description of the moon in the Vedas. The moon is a heavenly planet, and it's populated by demigods. In fact, the demigods go there to drink the somarasa that will increase your life at least 10,000 years every time you drink it. So that they didn't describe, the people that went on the moon, they didn't describe it like that. So that means they didn't go. Right? Now, it took so many years to realize that what Prabhupada said was actually true. But he said it right away in 1969. I don't think they went to the moon. And then later on in this verse, he says, I know for sure they didn't go. He says it right? You're going to mention that?
Yes, Maharaj.
Right. So you see, this Shastra Chakshus, seeing through the prism of the Vedic knowledge, is the correct way to see. And just based on our imperfect senses assuming things, that's always going to be imperfect and will never reach real knowledge. So most people are oblivious to this because they don't come to classes. Even some of our devotees, they don't understand anything. This is real philosophy. Our own devotees don't really understand it. And because of that, they also will be in trouble in their spiritual life. They get overwhelmed by different circumstances, and they get into arguments, and they get into confusion. Now, what was I going to say today that's shocking? Well, yesterday, a person who wrote a book criticizing Prabhupada's statements was thrown off the GBC. Absolutely thrown off. Right? Now, what book did I write? And by the way, we have to start sending it out free to all the temple presidents. They're going to be very interested to get the book because it's extremely opposite to what this idiot wrote, right? Who was a member of the GBC, right? So you see how things happen. Did I know that something like that was going to happen? Yes, I did, because they were talking about it for years. And then somebody just wrote a book about it, right? And there was a big backlash because it's actually very insulting to say such things about Prabhupada, right? Not that it's a dogmatic statement. It's just a fact. Prabhupada did not express any opinions. Everything he said in his books are validated by Vedic Shastra. Now, most people, they don't really read Prabhupada's books carefully. They think they know everything, but they don't really know anything. And then they come up to conclusions like, oh, Prabhupada made a mistake. He was a homophobic. He was a misogynist. He was influenced by the 19th century ethos in India. This is all nonsense, you see. And it's very easy to be a nonsense person, even in Krishna consciousness, because people don't listen. They don't come to class every day. They don't chant their rounds every day. They don't actually follow the 4 regulative principles every day. I'm not saying everybody, but there are a lot of people that don't do these things. They think they can get away with it. You can't get away with anything. You will be miserable. You will make many mistakes. And eventually you'll, like this person who's a member of the GBC, you'll blaspheme Prabhupada. You'll say he was wrong. He made these mistakes. He didn't understand modern culture. That's what they're saying. What do you mean he doesn't understand modern culture? He understands it better than anybody else. Right? Okay, so we're going to have to send out these books now. People will be interested in reading them. Huh? He was initiated by Prabhupada. Oh, he left the movement. No, this is a sitting member of the GBC. Yeah, I don't want to mention any names, but the sitting member of the GBC had to resign. Why? But if you insult Prabhupada, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to glorify. By the way, some people did glorify him. Some other members of the GBC glorified him. They said, "Oh, everything he wrote was correct." They might have to resign also. But you see, you're not going to get away with things like that. Or we're not going to get away with things like that. If you question Prabhupada's statements, you're questioning him. Right? But the book that I wrote is all about. He didn't make any personal opinions. See, that's the thing. Everybody's making personal opinions, and they're passing it on as if it's science or it's reality. It's not a fact. Prabhupada did not make any personal opinions, but you have to read his books carefully to see that. Otherwise, you won't be able to see it. Right? So these people who are members of the GBC who've passed like Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhava, Bhakti Vedanta, they got all the degrees, but they haven't understood anything about Prabhupada, or whatever they understood is wrong. So this is very dangerous. This is how movements like I already went over very carefully how the Christians deviated from Jesus, right? I gave you the exact information. It started with Aristotle, and then went to Origen, and then to Aquinas, and so forth. And they finally made a big hodgepodge nonsense of Christianity, right? And the Muslims followed them, and the Jews also followed them. So today, there are a lot of mistakes in the practice of their religions. The same thing was on its way to happen in ISKCON. But let's see if it's stopped or not. There might be a backlash from the deviants also. We'll see. But this is what happens, right? As time goes on, things deteriorate in the material world. So it's very, very important that we come every day to class so that we do not begin this slippery slope of descent into ignorance after having real knowledge presented to us. Right? Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
So we were
The
talking
other thing is
about-
coming late to class is a very bad thing. You have to be on time. Coming late every day is not good. Okay, go ahead.
So what we were talking about was how the process of knowledge is deduction, which
Is
is
what?
when the process of knowledge is deduction.
Deduction, okay.
When we get knowledge from the Shastra, like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and then we understand the rest of the world according to that. So Prabhupada mentions that our process of knowledge is not any speculation, no ifs, and no it may be or perhaps. Rather, our source of knowledge is Krishna and Krishna's disciples. And then he quotes, Evam parampara praptam imam rajarsho vidu, Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, 2nd verse. So the next topic Prabhupada talks about is going to the moon, how going to the moon is a hoax. So he says, so as far as we
He said
understand...
it's a hoax. It
Yeah.
never really happened. It was a Bollywood, Hollywood nonsense production. One of the most important things in the history of the world was a Bollywood production. And everyone fell for it. Go ahead. They're still believing it.
So according to the Vedic
So
literature...
one teacher has a children's class. She taught all her kids that they went to the moon. Then she heard the lecture I gave. And she's coming up to, well, what am I supposed to do? Should I tell everyone that they didn't go to the moon? I said, if you do that, the parents will probably take their kids out of your school. So I wouldn't say anything right now. Because she doesn't even believe it herself. So she's just shocked that, and she never listens to the classes seriously. So she's never going to really understand how we proved that they never went to the moon, right? So it's very interesting, you see, how people can believe things with absolute certainty that are completely wrong. That's the definition of illusion. To believe something that was never true, and you believe that it's true. That's an illusion. And there are many things like that. It's not just going to the moon. There are many, many things like that. That's why this world is screwed up. Right? There's so many problems in the world because too many people believe things that are not true. And the first and foremost thing that's not true is I am this body. That's the beginning of the false ego. But every child is taught, you are this body. You are Punjabi. You are Sindhi. You are American. You are black. You are this. You are that. It's all nonsense. It's not. It's never true. You were never this body. But yet, children are taught that. I was taught that when I was a kid, right? That, oh well, our ethnicity is the best. We're the smartest people in the world. Blah blah blah. It's all wrong. It's all nonsense, and it just creates a false ego. And from that, the whole false ego evolves. That means many more false concepts are accepted. As soon as you accept, I am this body. This is the genesis of ignorance in the world. And parents teach their children, you are this body. You are Hindu. You are Muslim. You are Christian. Now, when there's a hurricane and people are dying, and does it matter who's a Muslim or who's a Christian or who's an atheist? It doesn't matter. Prabhupada gave an example. There was this Muslim-Hindu riot when he was a little boy, and one Muslim guy was running after him, and Prabhupada somehow or other escaped. Right? The Muslim guy wanted to kill him. And Prabhupada was young. He was like 10 or 12 years old. But they could tell he was a Hindu. So then Prabhupada says, after the riot was over, they collected all the dead bodies in one big pile. And he went to look at it, and he couldn't tell who was a Muslim, who was a Hindu. They were all dead, right? The bodies are chopped up or whatever. He couldn't tell anymore. And they just piled them all up. The people that were trying to kill each other, they're all piled up. One's got his arm around another one that he tried to kill, or the other one's got his arms around the one he tried to kill. You see, this is all nonsense. See, all this bifurcation or a false identification, it's nonsense. And it just leads to people killing each other and hating each other. Okay, go ahead.
So Prabhupada mentions that according to the Vedic cosmology, the moon is the second planet and the sun is the first planet.
When it says first planet, it means the sun is closer to the earth than the moon, and the sun is the beginning of the spiritual world, or the Devalokas.
Yeah, yes.
Not spiritual world, but the Devalokas.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So according to the Srimad Bhagavatam's estimation, about 1.6 thousand miles above the sun,
1,600,000 miles, right?
or 1.6 million miles, yeah.
Yeah.
1.6 million miles above the sun, the moon is situated. And the sun planet is situated 93 million miles from Earth.
So the moon is almost 95 million miles away from the earth, farther away than the sun.
Yes.
Almost 95 million.
Yes. So Prabhupada gives the common sense that how can you reach there in 4 days? How can you reach 95 million miles away in 4 days? And he says that if we apply our common sense, then it appears they have never gone to the moon planet. It is all bogus propaganda, and it is not possible.
There it is. He's not saying I don't think they went. Now he's saying it's all bogus propaganda. They never went. The whole thing was a hoax. Go ahead.
And he mentions that the only source is the newspaper, and that is the authority that people are following. So Prabhupada makes a point that if people can believe in the newspaper, then why can he not believe in the Shastras?
Exactly.
So the next topic that Prabhupada talks about is how we get our next body in the cycle of birth and death. So the type of body that we receive is according to our karma. So Prabhupada quotes Srimad Bhagavatam 3.31.1. Karmana daiva netrena jantor deha upapti. According to your karma, you will get a type of body. And that is the law of nature. So nature's law will go on, and at the time of death, if we dictate, give me a body like this, that kind of desire will not be heard. It is because It is according to what we deserve in our karma that we receive the next body.
Yes.
And
One time, Prabhupada, I organized a program in Paris, and Prabhupada was giving a lecture, and he said, and if you are not Krishna conscious, you will become an animal. One guy raised his hand right away, and he shouted out, "What's wrong with being a dog?" Prabhupada looked at him and said, "Tadastu, may you become a dog." And we were all shocked when he said that. That's how crazy French people are. They're really crazy. You think Americans are crazy. The French are worse, much worse. And the British also. They're just completely out of this world, nuts. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, it's in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Have you ever read the 5th canto? Oh, well, you have some good reading ahead of you. There's a lot more in the 5th canto that you not even understand right now. Go ahead.
so the next topic that Prabhupada talks about, or actually before that, he again quotes Bhagavad Gita 13th chapter 22nd verse, Karanam gunasangasya sadasad janma yonshu. And he says that the laws of nature are constantly working, and as a person is infecting a particular type of body in the modes of material nature, he is constantly preparing what his next body will look like.
You notice he uses the word infecting. It's a disease, these false concepts. I am this body. I'm independent. I can do whatever I want to do. All these ideas are false, and they just put people into misery. Yeah, go ahead.
So now the next thing Prabhupada talks about is achieving the eternal life. So he again quotes Bhagavad Gita 3rd chapter 27th verse, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasaha, to mention that we are completely under the grip of the material nature. And so to overcome death, Prabhupada describes that the verse Srimad Bhagavatam 5th canto 5th chapter 5th verse says, Tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam sudyet, that you have to accept the process of austerity through which you can purify your existence, and this will help you achieve eternal life.
I was talking to a lady the other day in the temple here. She's a very, very wealthy lady, and it's a friend of mine, but she doesn't come a lot to the temple, but every once in a while she comes. And I was explaining to her how to become immortal, and she got really interested because that's what all rich people want. They want to become immortal, to not die. And I explained to her that, I said this was explained 5,000 years ago by Krishna. Bhagavad Gita is all about how to become immortal. So she was very interested, But when I started explaining it, she sort of like tuned out, right? Now, why did she tune out? Because whenever there's a question of surrendering to the Lord, they don't go for it. They want to be immortal without surrendering to the Lord, right? In other words, this is what happens to people because they're contaminated by material false ideas. The idea that I should surrender for them is defeat. Surrender for the devotees is success. You see how there's complete opposite cultures here. And everyone's talking about not to surrender, just like Zelensky. We're never going to surrender. Okay. Then you're going to fight to the last Ukrainian, right? That's what's happening more or less. The whole country is getting ruined because they're not going to give up. And you have Crazy Joe behind him. So, well, we'll give you as many guns as you want, so that you can die to the last person. That's called look this up, Pyrrhic etheric victory. Pyrric, something like that. Okay, PHY. We studied that word before. What is etheric victory?
It's a victory that comes at a great cost, perhaps making the ordeal to win not worth it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's exactly what's happening. In the end, yeah, we won, but our whole country is ruined. Millions of our people have left the country, probably will never come back again. And now we have to rebuild everything that got destroyed. That'll take years. And so it was not worth it. It would have been better not to go to war. See. Okay, go ahead.
So the next topic that Prabhupada talks about is purification of existence. So materialists make nice arrangements to live happily ever after in the current material life. However, Krishna says, Mrityu sarva haras chaham, Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter 34th verse, that he is the all-devouring death and he is the generating principle of all that is yet to be. So in the human form of life, as devotees, we also accept death, but our purpose of the material life is to purify our existence and to realize God. Therefore, we can pass the examination of death. So if we do not understand the relationship with God, then we are simply wasting time living like cats and dogs. And the whole point of the Krishna consciousness movement is for this purification of existence and to end the material civilization and give eternal life.
Well, end the materialist civilization and establish the spiritual civilization of how to become liberated from the cycle of birth and death. That's the spiritual realization, culture. And the material cultures, they also want to be free from birth and death, but they don't follow the right process. They want to do it with nanotechnology, with cryonics, with this theory, with that theory, and they're all wasting their time and energy doing silly things that don't work. See? I hope none of you want to get your body frozen, hoping that they'll unfreeze you in the future and then heal you from your sickness. It's not going to happen. Yes, somewhere. You want to be frozen? Oh, okay. What? Yeah, you read the book, Easy Journey to Other Planets, that teaches you how you can transfer your body to the moon or to the sun or to Indraloka or to Brahmaloka, etc. You want to go to those places? Yeah, that's why Prabhupada wrote the book, Easy Journey to Other Planets. And notice he used the word easy. He didn't say it's really hard, it's almost impossible. No, he's saying it's easy if you know the process. Right? Okay, go ahead.
So the final topic is about how only devotees can change their fate.
Fate, F-A-T-E,
Yeah.
right? Not faith, F-A-I-T-H. Okay.
Yeah, fate. So here Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter 66th verse, Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayashyami. That
Mahasucha.
I shall give you protection from all the resultant actions of your sinful life. So if one surrenders to Krishna, then their fate is changed because Krishna takes care of their previous sinful reactions. But if one doesn't surrender to Krishna, then they have to suffer or enjoy the actions of their fruitive activities.
So you see, the cutoff point for most people is the word surrender. There was this one Indian man, he was a freedom fighter for India. His name was Surrender Nath. Surrender Nath. The British used to call him Surrender Not. So that's who most people are. They're surrender not. As soon as you use the word surrender, they zone out, as they say in English, in colloquial English. They zone out. They can't accept to surrender. They want to be completely independent. And they don't want anybody to tell them what to do. And they want to figure things out on their own. Therefore, they'll spend like $500,000 on cryonics to be frozen. Now, if I freeze you, do you think when we unfreeze you, you'll be alive or dead? What do you think? What do you think, Prabhupada? Yeah, of course, you'll be dead. So this is crazy ideas, And there's hundreds of people that are frozen right now, waiting to be immortal in the future when they figure out how to solve the riddle of death. That's never going to happen, because death is one of the 4 laws of material nature that you cannot change. So they're trying to do something that's impossible. Like Elon Musk, he wants to establish different colonies on Mars. Elon, you're not going to be able to do that. You can try. And many years ago, about 15 years ago, I was speaking to this one very wealthy man I know, who was competing with Elon for like SpaceX and things like that, right? He wanted to be the first one to go to the moon. I told him, look, Prabhu, it's not going to work. He said, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I said, I don't know what I'm talking about? Okay. I said, let's wait 5 years and talk about this again. Before the 5 years, he gave up. Every attempt he made was silly and ineffective, you see. So, and whenever I remind him of it, he changes the subject. He tells me of his new project, this other project that he's done. So you see, these are laws of nature. You cannot violate the laws of nature. They're established by Krishna himself. Just like there are 4 varnas, Kshatriyas, and there's Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras. I showed you in the Soviet Union, they tried to eliminate the 4 varnas. They couldn't do it. After 80 years, they failed. Right? And there were always 4 varnas in the Soviet Union. They had different names, but there was the same thing as the varnashram system. These are laws of nature. No one can change these laws. But of course, everyone's trying to change things, thinking they're smarter than everyone else. Right? Okay.
Yeah, so that was the final point, that it is impossible to change fate without surrendering to the Lord.
Right.
Because only by surrendering to the Lord.
Fate means your karma, basically.
Yeah.
So here we have one lecture. And every statement that Prabhupada makes in this lecture, he backs it up by Shastra. Only a pure devotee can speak like that and write like that. Not ordinary people can't do this. And he doesn't quote the whole verses. He just quotes the relevant part of the verse that's directly what he's talking about. So this is like only a pure devotee can write like that. Right? So here we have one lecture that explains the whole Krishna consciousness. If you just study this one lecture, you'll have the whole understanding of Krishna consciousness. That's how powerful Prabhupada's words are. And yet there's some idiot people that say, oh, he made some mistakes. He didn't make any mistakes. They made a mistake. And they got kicked off of the GBC because they dared to criticize Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so are there any questions? Yes. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, there's several more people that have.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, in the science that we study, moon is shown as like a satellite to the earth.
It's the closest planet to the earth.
Yeah, closest planet to the earth, and it's a satellite. Why are they describing it that way? If the moon is that far, where did that start to describe that moon is the closest planet?
Well, I would have to study it, just like I explained how Christianity deviated. I would have to find out. So I don't know right now. But it's based on speculation. It's based on false ideas. by the way, the moon, according, if you read the 5th canto, it's 20 times bigger than the sun. Did you know that? It's 20 times bigger than the sun, according to Shastra. So to make such a mistake, you got to really be an illusion. Right? And that's why they've never really gone to the moon. So I'll look it up. And it's in the 5th canto. We'll figure that out. All right, Swarit. So let's see, who else is there that hasn't read yet? Prabhuji, you have your, you did the homework also, right? Okay, go ahead. Let's hurry up now. So very good, Shrestha. Very comprehensive. Very, very good. Okay, I did the homework, but what was the but? What did you say? You left it at home? That's all right. Okay. There's always another day.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I'm sorry for being late. My homework is for noting the points in Srimad Bhagavatam lecture by Prabhupada 5.5.1. So my points were, so in the first paragraph, Srila Prabhupada talks about the Vedas and says that Vyasadeva compared the Vedas to a tree. As the tree gives that fruit, the Vedas also give the fruit of knowledge. So then he describes about the Vedas giving the fruits. And then Prabhupada also says that Vedic civilization means to realize God. We are just part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. One example is Arjuna when the war was about to begin. Arjuna was lamenting about killing his cousins and family members. So that is an example when...
that is what?
That's an example of when Arjuna was relating to the body conception of life.
In other words, if you relate to the bodily conception of life, which is 99.9% of people in this world, you will say no to Krishna eventually. Just like Arjuna said, no, I'm not going to fight because of the bodily conception of life. Go ahead.
And then the bodily conception of life is animal life. Anyone who thinks like this is a combination of flesh, blood, bone, urine, stool, and many other things. Really, you are the spirit soul. That is true realization. Everything belongs to God. Prabhupada here gives the example of the finger. If the finger is connected to the hand, it has value. But when it is severed, the finger remains the same, but it has no value.
Mm-hmm. When it's severed, it's cut off.
Yeah.
Then it has no value.
And in the material world, it is extremely hard not to be spoiled. We work very hard for the things that we do not need. Similarly, a hog also works for no result. Prabhupada also says that everyone will die at some point in life. So we should not waste our time doing activities that will get things that we do not need.
Well, we shouldn't buy more houses, more cars. We shouldn't overeat. We shouldn't oversleep. We shouldn't deprive ourselves of sleep. We shouldn't deprive ourselves of food. We have to have a balance in life, right? And that balance is following the regulative principles and chanting Hare Krishna and associating with devotees. That then we'll have a balanced life. But if we go through periods like long periods of not associating properly and not following the regulative principles, then we don't have a balanced life. And we'll go excessive. We'll do things that are actually self-destructive. Go ahead.
And then my last point is, like, instead of wasting it for material things, you can utilize it for a higher standard of life.
You can utilize everything material by dovetailing it to Krishna's service. That's the real science of Krishna consciousness. How to use everything material in the service of God. That means you have knowledge. Some people think, well, no, I can't use everything. No, you can, but you have to have the knowledge of how to do it. And that's why you come to class. We can teach you how to use everything in the service of Krishna. Go ahead.
And that's it, Maharaj.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
All right, Prabhu, you're up.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So this Prabhupada's lecture is based on the Srimad Bhagavatam verse 5.5.1, in which Lord Rishabha is teaching his sons how to attain eternal blissful life which lasts forever.
Okay, who remembers what our homework is for next week? Okay, so, all right, what's the homework? Now say it out loud so everyone can hear. Give him the microphone for a second. You'll get the microphone back.
Maharaj, you gave us some questions yesterday to ask ourselves and also our kids. And I can read one or two questions. And it says, so do you believe you existed before birth in this body? Do you believe you continue to exist after body dies? And such, you gave us around 8 to 10 questions to ask ourselves and kids.
No, that's not the homework.
And right,
you have to fill it out. There's a lot more questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you're gonna put yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and you're probably gonna get a lot of no's because there's a lot of people that don't know anything. That's a pun. You'll get a lot of no's because there are a lot of people that don't know anything. So they'll say no, 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 no. Right? And that shows you how your child is not really educated, or that you're not really educated, because you're saying no to all these things that are fundamental to Krishna consciousness. Okay? So it's very instructive to do this. You're actually testing yourself, and then you're testing the kid to see how much you know about Krishna consciousness and how much you don't know. Right? And it's all a question, it's always based on what you believe to be true or not true. Now, most people are going to say a lot of no's because they don't have real knowledge of what is the truth. And because of that, their life will be a failure. And they'll take birth again in the material world. Who knows what body they'll get? There's 8,400,000 different bodies. And they'll just keep traveling up and down in the what you call the Ferris wheel syndrome. Look that word up, syndrome. The Ferris wheel syndrome. Huh? What? What? Well, yes, it is cyclic. But what is the cycle? What is the Ferris wheel? Yes. Yeah, but what happens? This, you have to understand what's going on. What's it say? Is there a phrase, Ferris wheel syndrome? Yeah. Go ahead, read it out loud. Get the microphone.
So here there is an article about how to combat the Ferris wheel syndrome.
Okay.
So basically, Ferris wheel provides you with ups and downs.
Yeah, because sometimes you're in one of the chairs and it goes all the way up on the top, and you go, "Hey, mommy, daddy, look, I'm all up here." And they say, "Oh, wonderful, wonderful." And then it comes down again and say, "Oh, I'm on the bottom now." You see. That's the Ferris wheel syndrome. Sometimes you're on the top, sometimes you're on the bottom. This is what's happening to people in this world. Sometimes they go to the heavenly planets, and sometimes they go to Narak, the demoniac planets. They're just going up and down, up and down, up and down in the cycle of birth and death, but they never get liberated from it because they don't come to class, they don't follow the rules and regulations of civilized life. They're uncivilized. They're barbarians. Okay, go ahead, Prabhu.
So
that's not a word.
sorry. So in this verse, Lord Rishabha is.
That's not a word. Stop saying
In this verse, Lord Rishabha is teaching his sons how to attain eternal blissful life which lasts forever. And humans should not work hard like days for sense gratification. They should engage in penance, austerity to attain devotional service and attain purified heart.
Okay, now you're a father. Are you speaking like that to your son or to your child?
Not this much.
You see, there's a no. That's why we're studying this. Where Rishabhadev, he had 100 sons. He's instructing them in this transcendental knowledge. We're not instructing our children in transcendental knowledge, even though we come to class and all that. So our children are developing a different culture than we are, because we're not able to articulate this culture to them or explain it to them. But see, Rishabhadev, he was a real father. He explained this to his sons. Go ahead.
The first point, Prabhupada is saying that there is a compulsory retirement in Vedic civilization.
A compulsory what?
Retirement.
Retirement, okay,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, like Joe. Joe has to retire. He's too old.
In Vedic literature, the principles followed by the inhabitants of Bharatavarsha is called Varnasrama Dharma, that is real occupation. Vedic civilization is meant for God realization, Vishnu Aradhyate, but we are thinking in terms of this body. Next point is purpose of Vedic civilization and human body. But body is a combination of flesh, bone and mucus. Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit, soul. This is the real knowledge. So in Bhagavad Gita 15.7, Krishna said, the living entities are my part and parcel. So we are covered with material energies, earth, water, air, fire, sky, mind, intelligence, ego. These are inferior energies. And in 7.5, Krishna says, there is another superior energy of mind, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of the material inferior nature.
Yeah, in other words, everyone you see, it could be a tree, it could be a plant, it could be an aquatic, it could be a mammal, it could be a bug, it can be a demigod, it can be a human being. Seems to be a combination of matter and spirit. In other words, there's a soul. If there's no soul, the body is dead. You can do an experiment. You can shoot somebody, they die, and that's it. They're not going to talk to you anymore. They're not going to walk anymore. So that means something is missing in the body. Body is still there, but there was something else that was animating the body with consciousness. That's the soul. So it's not difficult to understand the existence of the soul, because everyone's so dull and stupid that you talk about a soul and they just zone out. That's look that word up, zone out. That's colloquial English. It's not proper English, but that's that's a good way to describe. People are zoned out. They just can't understand that there's such a thing as an eternal soul. They think there's only the body. Did you find it? Yes, go ahead. You're tired or drunk? Did it say? Or tired or drugged, etc. Yeah. So that's when you zone out. You can learn colloquial English now, or bad English. Okay, go ahead.
So we are now covered with material energies, although we are spiritual energy. So this human form of life is a chance to understand that I am not this body.
Nobody is teaching this. They don't teach this in school. They don't even teach it in their house. Go ahead.
Next point is we are not independent. Everything belongs to God. The spiritual conception of life is that everything belongs to God. Ishwarasya idam sarvam. So we have no separate existence from Krishna. So example he is giving is a carpenter is making a furniture, and supplier is giving the money and carpenter gets paid. So the furniture belongs to the supplier. So Maharaj, I have added some additional points from another book.
Another book.
Yeah.
Ooh. This is very dangerous. Let's see what.
Another book of Prabhupada.
Oh well. You forgot to say that. Okay, go ahead.
So
Let's hear what you got. Let's hear it.
Yeah, it's from Beyond Doubt and Illusion book. Okay. So in that, Prabhupada was asked the question by a devotee about Karl Marx idea.
About what?
Karl Marx. Karl Marx.
Karl Marx.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where the means of production will be owned in common. So in that,
I explained this the other day. Yeah. Karl Marx said the person who actually builds the product, that's the real owner, not the person, the capitalist that put the money up for the raw materials.
Yes.
Okay, so he would say it's the worker that should own the product.
He's asking, in that case, no one would have an advantage over anyone else, and thus one person could not exploit another. And Marx is thinking in terms of profit. So
well, see, this is why we have what's called employee-owned company. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
The employee-owned company means that there is no capitalist that owns the company because he's got a lot of money and he's just hiring people to work for him. The employees themselves own the company, and according to how much work they do, they get paid. And they get some dividends also if the company is profitable. So there are a whole bunch of employee-owned companies in the United States now. One is Bob. You know who Bob is? You don't know who Bob is? You never see those boxes in the stores? Yeah. Yeah. So Bob's company is an employee-owned company. He doesn't own it. He's a member of it. He turned it into an employee-owned company. What? Oh yeah, okay. Winco, yeah, that's another employee. Okay. So you see, we have what you call these hybrid examples in a capitalist country like the United States, where you have employee-owned companies, which is a socialist idea. Well, it's not a socialist idea. No, it is basically it's a communist idea that the people who work own the company, not the people who have the capital to buy raw materials. Go ahead.
So for this question Prabhupada is answering, first we must know what profit actually is. For example, the American hippies already had profit. They were from best homes. Their fathers were rich. They had everything. Yet they were not satisfied and rejected No, this idea of a classless society based on profit sharing is imperfect. Besides, the communists have not created a classless society. We have seen in Moscow how a poor woman is washing streets while her boss sits comfortably in a car. So, where is the classless society?
That never happened, although they tried to do it,
Yeah.
to make a classless society. It failed. Because you can't change something that Krishna has established. He said there's these four varnas. There's the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and Sudras. You can't change it. You can try. Like the Russians did for over 80 years, and it was a total failure. Go ahead.
As long as a society is maintained, there must be some higher or lower classification. But if the central point of the society is one, then whether one works in a lower or higher position, he doesn't care.
Okay, this is the principle of concentric uh, concentric uh, uh, circles. Okay, what is a concentric circle? You want to look it up? When there are concentric circles, there's no intersections. That means everyone gets along with each other. But when people don't have the same focal point, then there are intersections, and that means there's going to be strife, there's going to be fighting, there's going to be sue me, sue you blues, as they say. You know, what's it say? Concentric? Say out loud.
Two or more objects are said to be concentric when they share the same center.
Yeah, so if that same center is Krishna, then nobody's going to be arguing, because if you please Krishna, and my goal is also to please Krishna, I'm happy. And if I please Krishna, and your purpose in life is to please Krishna, you're happy. But if I have a different concentric circle, and I say, well, my center of importance is my family or my race, like Black Lives Matter. Other people say, well, all lives matter. No. Only Black Lives Matter. Well, see, that's racism. That's not... You're creating different focal points. So there's going to be intersection. That means there's going to be strife. This is why we come to class, to learn these concepts. Concentric circles in which there's no conflict, because everybody has the same goal, to please Krishna. Go ahead.
For example, our body has different parts, the head, the legs, the hands, but everything is working for stomach.
What? Everything's working for?
Stomach.
Okay, so all the appendages of the body, like the hands, the legs, and so forth, they're all cooperating to feed the stomach. And why do they do that? Because then the stomach digests the food and then distributes the energy to all parts of the body. But if your finger says, no, I'm not going to cooperate with the other appendages, I'm going to try and eat the food myself, would that work? If the finger says, I'm only going to try and eat it myself, that's not going to work. The finger and the rest of the appendages of the body, they should all work in a cooperative way to feed the stomach, and then the stomach will digest the food and distribute the energy equally to all parts of the body. This is the difference between the concentric circle model and the lack of concentric circles, all having different areas of interest and then intersecting and then fighting where they intersect. Just like the Palestinians and the Jews are fighting because they both want the same land but for different purposes. The Palestinians want it for a Palestinian state, and the Jews want it for a Jewish state. Just like in parts of Kashmir, the Indians and the Punjab and the Muslims are fighting. They want the same land to be Muslim, And on the other side, they want the same land to be Hindu, predominantly Hindu. Or you have Khalistan. The Sikhs want their own country. They don't want to be part of India. So they want the same thing, but for a different purpose. And the Indians want the same thing, but for a different purpose. This is going on all over the world. That's why there are wars, just like Ukraine and Russia. Russia says Ukraine always belonged to Russia. And the Ukrainians say, well, no, we want to be free. So they're fighting over the same land, but for different purposes. Now, Krishna consciousness is based on concentric circles of interest, where everybody has the same purpose, that is to please Krishna. Now there's not going to be any fighting. There's going to be cooperation, unless someone is jealous. But if they're not jealous, there's going to be cooperation. So if one person pleases Krishna, everybody else is happy. And if another person pleases Krishna, everybody's happy. This is the way to create a temple. In the temple, if everybody cooperates, there's no fighting. And that's what the leader of a temple, that's the main job, is to help devotees stay on the proper track of concentric circles of interest. We should all be concerned about pleasing Radha and Krishna according to the Shastric knowledge explained in Bhagavad Gita and especially outlined by Srila Prabhupada. If we were all on the same point, but if you say, well, no, Prabhupada made some mistakes, he made some homophobic statements, we got to take those out of his books. Now there's going to be a fight because that's a deviation. Right? Okay, go ahead.
So actually everything belongs to so actually nothing belongs to us. We also do not belong independently. We are not independent. We are part and parcel of Krishna.
Yeah, we're not independent. Yeah.
Just like a finger attached to the hand.
So capitalism is inherently wrong. Why? Because it says most of the laws in a capitalistic society is for personal property owned by people, right? And that's why you have so many lawyers, because there's always arguments about personal property. So you have hundreds and thousands of lawyers, and there's one person suing another person because they usurped the property, and so forth. So you see, the capitalist system is not the proper system. We've gone over this before. A country is organized according to the principle of proprietorship. So you have socialist countries, you have communist countries, you have also anarchist countries, you have dictatorship countries, you have also countries in which there is countries organized by religions. So all these different countries have a different concept of proprietorship. And they're all wrong. The only right concept of proprietorship is that Krishna is the owner, not that people are the owner, or nobody is the owner, or just the government is the owner, that's socialism, or the people are the owner, that's communism, or there's no owner, that's complete chaos. So a country is organized according to the principle of proprietorship that it has. And what you have now are multiple proprietorships. So the United States is no longer a pure capitalistic country. It introduced a lot of socialism, especially in the 1930s with Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his wife. They introduced many socialist concepts that are still going on today. So you have these hybrids, just like China. China introduced capitalism into communism. It's still a communist state, but they are tolerating some aspects of capitalism in their state. You see, so you have this this what you would call morphing or changing, or and this was a theory of Hegel. You can look him up, not now. Hegel had what's called a dialectic. What is the dialectic? Dialectic means that there is a theory, then there's the opposite of the theory, and then there's a new theory that evolves over time. There's a thesis, antithesis, and then a synthesis. Okay, I'm not going to explain this too much more, but these are different philosophical concepts that are very prevalent today. And the idea is that first, you have the United States started with George Washington and the first, organization, and then they said, "In God we trust." Now today, still in every dollar it says, "In God we trust," but now there's a change of culture, and many people reject the idea of God in the United States. So it's changing, right? And then along with that are different ideas like gender fluidity, and then there's also critical race theory, and this theory, and that theory. So the whole culture is changing from what it started out to be to what it is now. That's why if George Washington came back again today, he wouldn't be able to recognize the United States. He said that this is not the United States that we organized in 1775. It's completely different than what we did. So you see, over time, things change because of deviations. Right. Okay, go ahead. And Hegel gave this example of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. You have an idea, then you have the opposite of the idea, and then you have a synthesis. It comes together. Just like you have communist China, and now it's communist China, but with a lot of capitalism. And then it's going to become something different when there's a synthesis of the capitalism and the communism. So they'll call it the communo-capitalism, right? Which is something new. Right. Go ahead.
Prabhupada says, Rishabha.
Stop saying all the time.
Sorry, Maharaj. Prabhupada says, Rishabhadeva is advising his sons that the body is not to be spoiled, engaging it uselessly, very hard labor for satisfaction of senses. This is the first attack to the human civilization.
Yes, so we're not meant to work so hard. That doesn't mean we should be lazy. It means that we should work intelligently, but have a balance in our life between spiritual life and material life. Right now, that balance is completely broken, and most people don't have any spiritual life at all, or they have very little spiritual life. That's not the way Krishna planned for people to live. It's what's been developed according to the Asuric culture. Go ahead.
Simply working very hard and then satisfying your senses, and you take it as civilization. It is not civilization.
It's called the Mammonist philosophy. Mammonist philosophy. It's a Christian word from the Bible. It means you work hard and you play hard. You work very hard to make a lot of money, and then you spend all that money for sense gratification, and you try and get as much sense gratification as you can. Then you go back and work really hard again, and basically you're like the hamster. You know what the hamster is? Nobody knows what a hamster is? What is a hamster? It's a tiny animal. It's furry. And what happens in the cage of the hamster? There's a wheel. So the hamster gets on the wheel and starts running. Does it go anywhere? Yeah. So that's the hamster syndrome. People are running, whiz, 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 in their cars, and their mind is going, whiz, 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 but they're not going anywhere. They're still in the same place, sense gratification. They're not going anywhere. In fact, yeah, they're staying in the cycle of birth and death. That's the hamster syndrome. You didn't look up the definition of syndrome. So we have two syndromes today: the concentric circle, or the Ferris wheel syndrome, concentric circles, and the hamster culture. What's a syndrome? What's it?
Group of symptoms which consistently occur together are a condition characterized by a set of associated symptoms.
Yeah. So in other words, go ahead, get the microphone. Read that again. A syndrome.
A syndrome is a group of symptoms which consistently occur together, or a condition characterized by a set of associated symptoms.
Yeah, like for example, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. That's some symptoms, right? And people live by those symptoms, and they eat, they sleep, they mate, and they defend. That means they're not human beings. That's what animals do. They eat, they sleep, they mate, and defend. The humans do things that can do some things that animals don't do, such as understand their relationship with God. So, but if there's a human being that only eats, sleeps, mates, and defends, he's not a human being, he's an animal. He or she is an animal. And there are a lot of animals in this world, right? Two-legged animals. In fact, most people are two-legged animals. They're not actually human beings. Now, yeah, everyone laughs. They say, oh, Harivilas is telling these jokes. No, it's not a joke. This is serious. Most people are animals. They're not human beings. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Finish. You have more?
Yeah. 2 more pages.
What?
2 more pages.
Okay, go ahead. Hurry.
So
Hurry, curry.
Next
Hurry,
point
curry.
is Prabhupada saying human life means very peaceful life without any trouble. And Vedic knowledge is first took up by Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, used to distribute it to the common people. And the main principles of Vedic civilization means Varnasrama Dharma, following 4 principles of Varna and 4 principles of Asrama. That is the ultimate goal, and the ultimate goal is God realization. So once we give up the material civilization, the next engagement is tapasya, means austerity, penance, voluntarily acceptance of something which may not be very palatable. Example, eating solid food when one is having typhoid fever is death. The doctor advises that don't take any solid food, but if we take that, then it is death. Similarly, we have to follow the Shastric injunction. Our knowledge should be through the Shastra. Our process of knowledge is not based on any speculation. For example, Padma Purana says that there are 900 species in water, and we have to accept it. If you can believe that in newspaper, then can't I believe in Shastras? Our source of knowledge is Krishna or Krishna's disciple. Knowledge comes from higher authorities. Rishabha is giving knowledge to his sons. That is the example he is giving.
Do you believe all these things that you're reading?
Yes, Maharaj.
You do? You believe
Yes.
them? You practice it?
I'm trying to practice. Yeah. Okay. Then he is talking about nature.
How hard are you trying?
Like.
You're just trying?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Then he is talking about nature's law. When Krishna says that within this body there is another living soul, the living soul is transmigrating and getting another body. One will.
The living soul is what?
Transmigrating.
Transmigrating, yeah.
One will get a type of body according to his karma. This is nature's law and we cannot change it. And next topic is how to get...
Most people don't even believe there's laws of nature or laws of Krishna. Laws of nature means dharma, the laws given by Krishna. Most people don't believe it. We, as devotees, we know that there are two sets of laws, the laws of the state and the laws of Krishna. And we have to follow both. Most people, they're ignorant. They don't even know that there's laws of God. Or they hear it in the Bible, the Ten Commandments, this thing, that thing, but they don't really follow them. Or they follow them loosely. Go ahead.
The next topic is how to get eternal life. If you want to stop death, then you have to accept the process of austerity by which you will purify your existence. Then you will get deathless life, eternal. Next topic is importance of literature. Bhagavata literature, Vedic literature is giving us information how we can revive our original eternal life. Nitya Shasado Ayam Nahanyade Hanyamane Sharire. And next he is talking about the consequences if you are not following. So in the human form of life, if you do not purify our existence, if you do not realize God, and if you do not understand what is my relationship with God, then we are simply wasting time living like cats and dogs. These things should be stopped. And then he is talking about the importance of training children. If we cannot expect a good civilization if children are trained as Vebhicharis. If we train our children in brahmachari system and gradually they understand the Bhagavata Dharma, at least their life becomes perfect.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So I think we'll stop there. I know a few more people did homework, but we don't have time now. So do you understand what the homework is for next week? It's a whole set of questions that you're going to ask yourself, and after that you're going to ask your children. And see how many yeses and nos you get. And that'll show you whether you actually educated yourself or whether you've educated your children. So I only gave you a few questions to ask. There's many, many more. So you have to come up with those many, many more by studying Prabhupada's lecture. Okay? All right, so we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. All glory to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we have to send out these books. You just send one. Yeah, and ask them if they want purchase. No, just the U.S. About, I don't know, about 40 temples or something like that. So we will. So if they want to buy the book, they can buy it for $2.50. So if you teach your kids these points that are in this lecture, they will not run around wild when they come to the temple. So we can tell which parent is actually teaching their kids and which parents are not teaching their kids. If your kids are running around wild in the temple, which is I notice it almost every day. That means you're not actually a parent. You are a person who supports chaos. The temple is not a playground. It's a place where kids learn to be control their senses and their mind. If they're just running around, screaming, playing tag, then you're actually trying to ruin the temple and ruin the image of the temple for other people that come here who actually control their kids. So from now on, when I see kids running around wild, I'm going to ask you to leave. And don't come back until you can control your child. Haribol.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Bandhamuni Savadhana Mate Bandhamuni Savadhana Mate Jahara prasade bhai e bhavatoriya jai Krishna prapti ho jaha hote Krishna prapti ho jaha hote
Krishna prapti ho
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chite te koriya kya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chite te koriya kya
Arana kori ho mane Asha Arana kori ho mane Asha
Arana koriya mane asha
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो प्रेम भक्ति चाह होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते प्रेम भक्ति चाह होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते वेद गाय जहर चरितो वेद गाय जहर चरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु लोकना लोकेर जीवाना लोकना लोकेर जीवाना आहा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पाद छाया आहा प्रभु करो दया देहो मोरे पाद छाया एबे जाश कुशुक्ति भुवाना एबे जाश कुशुक्ति भुवाना जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमः नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे नमस्ते जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararaja Shasta Tarasatra Shishi Shimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Ram Shikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi all glories to the Assembled Lord. All glories to the Assembled Lord. All glories to the Assembled Lord. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavan Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Vani Pacharni Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Dasatani. The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet in great honor and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to my consciousness purify the words and writing of his lotus. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. You can my heart fills my heart with thanks. He is my Lord, worth of power. From whom ecstatic fame I bliss, by him glory is destroyed. A spiritual master is the ocean of universe. Fame is spread all over the field. We take the shelter of